Welcome back to Buckeye Bigfoot. Hey, thanks everyone that showed up and listened for the Bigfoot Palooza last weekend. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. And yes, I think I will plan another Palooza for Labor Day weekend. Also, I wanted to ask you, what should I call these big weekend Bigfoot Palooza-a-thons? I don't know. Does Bigfoot Palooza have a nice ring to it? Now, my husband is voting for Big Sass Palooza. What do you think? If you have a great name for the weekend Bigfoot Paloozas, or if you just want to keep it known as Bigfoot Palooza, let me know in the comments below, and we'll start making this a thing. Okay. Real quick, I have two things I want to mention, and they kind of go together. One, I have heard from several of you that you're having withdrawals after the Palooza of Bigfoot encounters last weekend, and you're missing those nightly stories. Yeah, and I get that. Maybe in time I can do some daily stories if I start getting enough encounters. We'll see. Two, this is a little personal tidbit about me, about Nance. In case you guys didn't know, I have a really big soft spot for kids, and I like to support them when they strike out on their own. So what do those two things have to do with one another? Well, I'll tell you tonight after the encounter, so be sure to listen for it. Okay, now this week's encounter comes from Will, who lives in Scioto County, and he wanted to tell us about the day he fought a Trash-Squatch. Yes, that was his term. He called it a Trash-Squatch. So, here we go. We're going to get started. My name is Will, and I live in Scioto County, and I wanted to tell you about the day that I fought the Trash-Squatch. It all started after we came home from a 2-week vacation. It was late when we walked into the house, and we were pretty tired. We knew that there had been storms in the area while we were gone, but nothing had seemed serious. As far as we could tell when we entered the house, the only indication that anything had happened at all was the blinking digital clocks around the house that told us the power had gone off at least once. Now, living in a rural area, this didn't surprise us. As I said, it was late and we were tired. So tired we decided to unload the car in the morning and headed up to bed to get a good night's rest in our own bed. It was the next day that we discovered a problem that was caused by the storm. My wife had gone downstairs to do laundry when she noticed the deep freezer's tiny dot of a light on the lid was not lit. A quick opening of the freezer and she knew that everything inside the freezer was a loss. I found out that the freezer itself was also a total loss. I suspected there had been a power surge during the storm. Not relishing the task of emptying a freezer full of deer meat or the quarter beef we'd bought earlier that year, we set to work filling up several garbage bags and lugging them upstairs and into the garage. Now, I didn't want to put the meat in the garbage cans and leave them outside. It was Sunday afternoon by this time, and our trash day wasn't until Thursday. So while I didn't want to smell up the entire garage, I also didn't want to attract predators near the house. And I had seen a few black bears and coyotes around, and I didn't want that smell of rotting meat to draw them up close to the house. Closing the bags and the cans as tightly as we could, we had no choice but to leave the cans inside the garage, hoping that we could call for an extra pickup in the morning. The next day, my wife was able to get an extra pickup scheduled for us, but not until the next day, which was Tuesday. It wasn't optimal, but it was better than waiting till Thursday. I didn't care what the extra pickup was going to cost me. I wanted the rotting meat gone. Now, it was a little ripe smelling in the garage when I got home from work Monday night, but I told myself it would all be gone soon. It was 1:39 a.m. according to my bedside clock when I opened my eyes. My wife was shaking me awake. "Someone's trying to get in the garage," she said. I sat up on the bed and listened, fully awake now. I then heard what she had heard, the rattle of the garage door, which we could hear clearly as our bedroom was directly above the garage. It's probably a bear or something. It just smells the garbage, I said. But I sat there listening to be sure. Yeah, it's a bear. Or I don't know. A burglar wouldn't make that much noise rattling metal. They'd cut out a basement window or something. My wife gave me one of her I don't think so looks, then got up and started to put her bathrobe on. First lesson about my wife. She is very much a take no prisoners kind of woman. After 27 years of marriage to her, believe me when I tell you that I knew that once the belt on that bathrobe of hers was tied, she'd be grabbing that Benelli shotgun that she kept by the side of her bed, and that if I didn't stop her, there was a really good chance that I'd be paying all kinds of money to repair all the holes that she would blast all around the house. Again. But that's not the story you want to hear tonight, I know. You want to hear about me and the Trash-Squatch. So I'm just going to say that in 27 years with that woman, there has never been a dull moment in my marriage. Anyway, even though my wife could probably wrestle a bear better than I could, in case the bear or whatever it was had managed to lift the garage door, I cracked the door open just an inch. The garage was dark. Reaching out, I flipped on the inside garage light and saw to my relief that the garage door was still closed. The 2 garbage cans were neatly lined up near the entrance, ready to be wheeled down the drive to be picked up later that morning. Now, unlike my sweet little wife, I prefer not to blast everything I encounter into smithereens. So I set the shotgun down on a shelf and picked up the air horn can next to the bear spray that we had begun to keep handy with all the recent bear sightings near the house. Again, something thumped the garage door, and I watched as the metal slats of the garage door rumbled and shook in the track frame. This needed to stop, I thought. It's going to damage my garage door. So I let loose an ear-splitting blast with the canned air horn, standing about 2 feet from the door itself. Once I had stopped pressing on the air horn, of course my own ears were ringing, and I couldn't immediately tell if whatever it was had moved away. So I watched the garage door for a minute or more and saw no more movement, no more rattling, no more noise. I stood there for a few moments more, and satisfied that whatever it was had moved on, I set the canned air down, picked up the shotgun, and walked back into the kitchen to find my wife standing there, a Mossberg shotgun she had grabbed from somewhere in her hands. I swear to my goodness, that woman has a gun tucked into every nook and cranny in this house. Anyway, I assured her it was just a bear. It had moved on, and so we headed back upstairs to get a few more hours of sleep. In the morning, I was still a little leery of just opening the garage door blindly, just in case the bear, or whatever it was, had set up camp nearby. I walked to the door, listened, and heard nothing. I rattled the garage door, waiting to see if there was a response from the other side. There was none. Just to be sure, I grabbed the air horn can and gave it a short blast, all the while telling myself I really should take my son up on his offer to wire up the house with those newfangled video cameras and smart gadgets he keeps talking about. I heard the door from the kitchen open. "Everything okay?" my wife asked. "Yes," I replied with a little more annoyance in my voice than I meant. "Just go back inside, okay? I got this." I heard the door shut again. After rattling the garage door one more time and hearing nothing, I tucked the bear spray in one bathrobe pocket, the air horn in the other, opened the garage door, and looked around carefully. Seeing nothing, I began to pull the first garbage can down the 80 or so feet of driveway out to the main road. It was about 6:30 a.m., not enough for the sun to be completely up, but light enough at that time of the summer for me to see clearly all around me. I had just set the first can at the curb and turned to walk back to the house when I stopped. There was something dark, and it was moving at the entrance to the garage. I squinted, and I saw that it had flipped open the hinged lid of the garbage can and was digging through the trash bags of rotting food. Now, seeing all the dark fur, I thought it was a bear standing on its back legs, and that's the square peg of an image that my brain kept pounding into that round hole. Even though my eyes said that wasn't right, those aren't the proportions for a bear. Regardless, my eyes and my brain could not agree. I began to walk forward cautiously as I slipped the canned air horn out of my bathrobe pocket. I didn't really want a confrontation, but it stood between me and my house. And although my wife was a bold and self-sufficient woman, the thought of her opening that door again and startling that creature and it attacking her moved me forward quickly. As I walked, I let off the air horn, hoping to scare it off. To my surprise, it looked up at me immediately, and now, my brain and my eyes could both agree that what we were looking at was not a bear. Couldn't be a bear. No way, no how. It straightened up and stood upright, and it stood higher than the 7-foot-tall opening of my garage door. It turned to fully face me and let out a roar that I felt deep in my chest. Its body was wide and muscular. Its leathery face was twisted in a raging snarl. The mouth was open, and even from that distance I could clearly see long, sharp teeth at the front. They were like a dog's canine teeth. It held a bag of trash in its hand over the garbage can, and I saw the long wisps of fur that hung off the arm. It was staring at me, and then it tilted its chin downward. I could hear a rumbling as if it was growling deep in its chest. I don't know how else to describe this action other than it was issuing a challenge. It was looking at me, and it was as if it was saying, "Come at me, bro!" Yeah, which I clearly didn't want to do. But just then, my worst fear came true. Behind the creature, I saw a crack of light that quickly widened, and I knew my wife had also heard its roar and opened the kitchen door to see what was happening. The creature had heard her too, and turned to look back into the garage, moving its whole body to look behind it. I started waving and yelling, telling her to get back in the house, and I was also hoping to get the creature's attention off of her and onto me again. I saw the kitchen door quickly close. I dropped the air horn can, slipped the bear spray out of my pocket, and flipped up the safety cap. I walked forward as far as I dared and stopped. I wasn't sure if I was in range or not, but I let out a stream of bear spray anyway. The creature sort of wrinkled its face again and shook its head and began snorting and grunting. I then saw that the cloud of spray had mostly fallen short of where the creature stood. I walked forward again, quickly this time. I knew by now I was in range. The creature had held out a bag of dripping, rotting food through all of this. I remember that detail. I was looking again at the creature and let go of another burst of the bear spray, and this time it hit its mark. The creature began to howl in rage as the spray hit its eyes first, and then it began making choking sounds as the inhaled spray hit its throat and lungs. Now there was no breeze that morning, but my own eyes and throat began to burn, probably from walking into a fine mist of particles still hanging in the air from the first blast, I thought. I didn't care. I walked forward again several steps, determined to oust this creature from my area. Now I could barely breathe or keep my own eyes open, but I let go of one long final spray. Realizing I had only the tiniest hint of fine particles from the spray, I almost felt sorry for the creature taking the brunt of the spray. Almost. Before the last burst of spray had finished leaving the can, the creature turned and began running toward the forest of trees that stood about 70 yards from the side of the house. It covered the distance faster than any human athlete could. I watched as it ran on 2 legs, confirming again for my stunned brain that what I had just seen But let me tell you something else about my wife. No one, not me, not God, not you, no one can pull anything over on her. She said, and I quote, "Oh, bleepity bleep bleep, that was no bleeping bear." Now, it took some effort, but I got her to lay the rifle down and to stop her from going outside to hunt it down and kill it. And gentlemen, if you're listening, let me tell you that despite her sometimes crazy antics, my wife learned how to track and hunt from one of the best hunters I've ever known, her father. So I know if I had turned her loose, well, I don't want to think about it, but it wouldn't have ended well for someone or something. I knew what I had seen, and my wife knew it too. It was a Sasquatch. I had heard people for years say they had seen them here in Scioto County and some of the surrounding areas, but I just rolled my eyes when I heard that. I didn't believe them. Well, I believe them now, and I don't roll my eyes anymore. You know, the thing that bothered me the most was the creature's seemingly intelligent and patient approach to get at my garbage. Not to mention its stealth. It had waited. It waited for me to open the garage door and walk down the drive. Now, how did it know I was going to do that? I can only surmise that it had probably watched me do it numerous times before, and now we began to question all the times that our trash cans had been turned over or at least rifled through sometime in the night between the time we put them out in the evening and the morning before they were picked up. I had always blamed it on the raccoons, but I had to wonder, had it been the Trash-Squatch all this time? I also thought about where it could have come from that morning. I looked carefully around before stepping out of the garage. The trees were 70 yards, maybe a little more away. I still don't know where it was while it had been waiting and watching. But thanks to our son, we can now constantly monitor the outside from many different cameras of the smart home setup he installed for us. And though we've looked for many days, many weeks, we have never seen our Trash-Squatch again. Okay, everyone. Well, I don't think there's much question about this one. That Trash-Squatch smelled that rotting meat and was trying to get to it. You know, in the few emails when I went back and forth with Will, he did say as an afterthought that he really regrets having used that bear spray. And he kind of wishes now he would have just stood still and let it take what it wanted. It was only his fear that made him react as he did, he said. What do you think? If you found a Bigfoot going through your trash, would you intentionally scare it off? Would you confront it? Or would you just let it get some late night snacks? Let me know what you would do in the comments below. Now, I mentioned at the beginning that many of you have told me that you're having withdrawals after the Palooza, and that I have a soft spot for kids, and that somehow those two are related. Well, indeed, they are. I wanted to introduce you to a very young man who has started his very own channel here on YouTube, and I thought maybe some of you might enjoy it. And a new voice and some new stories might help ease your Palooza withdrawals. Now, when I say young man, I do mean young. Listen to any of his narrations and you'll understand just how young he is. So, yeah, okay, he's young, but you know what? He's over there narrating his little heart out with stories, trying to do his own research, doing everything he can to grow his channel and get noticed on YouTube. But so far, it seems like the algorithm for YouTube is completely ignoring him. So, if you would like to hear a fresh, young, articulate voice narrate some very original stories, hop on over to Encountering Bigfoot, and if you are as charmed by his storytelling as I am, let him know with a like and subscribe. Also, if you're going to the Bigfoot convention this month in Gatlinburg, Tennessee, he's going to be there. So if you see him, say hello to him. You'll find him. Just listen for that charming voice. If you've liked what you've heard and want to hear more, hit the like and subscribe buttons and then hit the bell to get notifications. Well, that's it for this week, everyone. I'm Nance Warren, and I'll be putting the sass into Sasquatch until we meet up again next Friday night. And as always, while you travel along the Bigfoot game trail looking for evidence, always remember that absence of proof is not proof of absence. Thanks for listening, everyone.